I think an important, great. I'll give folks maybe a minute or two after 5 to straggle into the room. And great to see some of our internship supervisors joining us here. We really appreciate your participation. Okay, let's get things started. I'm Adam Goodheart. I'm the director of the Star Center at Washington College, and I'd like to welcome all of you to our Explore America Summer Internship presentation. You'll be hearing from 14 students tonight about their summer experiences, but we promise that we will keep this event to just around an hour, including Q&A at the end. So really, out of all the programs that we do at the Star Center, this is among the programs that my colleagues and I are really proudest of and that we work very, very hard on. And that's because, as far as we can tell, it's really a unique opportunity to Washington College, one that you can't find certainly at other small liberal arts schools. But also, we see its impact year after year on individual students' lives. For first-year students and for sophomores, it often helps them discover their intellectual passions and shape the course of their later college careers. While for juniors and seniors, it can help launch them into the wider world of post-college life and continue the trajectory set by their liberal arts education and continue that trajectory through the rest of their life, no matter what their career ultimately is. The way that this program works, that part of what makes it so unique, is that Washington College not only provides funding to these students, up to $5,000 for a paid summer internship, but also arranges for them to have specific places that are set aside at some of America's most distinguished cultural institutions and nonprofits that year after year reserve spots for our students. And I think the reason for that really is owed to the students themselves, because year after year, they just do fantastic work at these institutions that makes the internship supervisors ask for more the following summer. Now, since the program's inception, there have been nearly 200 recipients, and the total of the grants that we've awarded to those students is now coming up toward $1 million. Now, this is not an endowed program for the most part. So we rely on the generosity of many different private donors, foundations, and other groups every year. We go out rattling our tin cups, as it were, and asking friends of the center to participate, and they loyally come back to us and help many of them year after year. Some of them are joining us tonight, and I'd like to give them special thanks because their generosity really does keep us going. Thanks as well to another group of VIPs who make this program possible, and that is to say that partners and mentors at our host institutions, and I see some of them here with us tonight. They provide valuable learning experiences each summer, and they often even continue to stay in touch with our students as they make their way into the post-college world. We're especially grateful this year because it was such a challenging time for cultural institutions everywhere due to the pandemic, which really makes us especially appreciative of the rich opportunities that those institutions could offer to our interns. And my final thanks go to my colleagues at Washington College who support this program, which is to say the faculty and the staff who reach out to prospective applicants, who serve on the search committee, who provide personal references for the candidates, develop new internship opportunities, and much more. Thanks as well to the Cater Society of Junior Fellows, which generously funded 6 of this year's positions. And last, but far from least, thanks to my Star Center colleagues who keep all of the very intricate wheels turning, especially Amber McGinnis and Casey Stewart, who were both new to our team this year, but just picked things up and ran with them and did a beautiful job. In a moment, we'll turn this over to our students, and this year's recipients, of which you'll meet about half tonight, are a diverse group of about 27 young people, ranging from freshmen to newly graduated seniors, and majoring in fields that range from history to chemistry, from art to economics. They too faced unusual challenges during this pandemic summer, the second pandemic summer, but as you'll see, they more than rose to the challenge. I'll close by quoting from one supervisor who hosted an Explore America intern at a nationally distinguished cultural institution and wrote to us midway through the semester and said, "This intern's work is honestly on the level of our advanced graduate students. I am so impressed with Washington College and the amazing students that come in and out of your doors. Keep them coming." So now here they come. Each of our students will speak for just a few minutes about their summer experiences, and at the end of the presentations, we'll invite all of you to share questions and comments, either in the chat section on Zoom or by raising your hand to be called on. And now we will hear from our first student. And Casey, who is our first student?
Our first student is Mackenzie Bowie.
Mackenzie, welcome.
Thank you. Awesome. So am I unmuted? Yes. Sorry, it's been a while since I've Zoomed. So thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Mackenzie Bowie, and I'm now a sophomore. I'm majoring in political science and sociology with a minor in justice, law, and society. And this summer, I interned remotely at the Public Religion Research Institute as a research intern. PRRI is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that researches public opinion on religion, politics, and culture. Next slide, please. Thank you. My tasks this summer included writing short blog posts called Spotlights on collected PRRI data. And the 2 graphs on the right are actually from my spotlights. The top one is on LGBTQ support based on political party and ideology, and the bottom is on climate change attitude by US region. And I use the program's data to analyze survey responses using multiple variables such as age group, political party, religion, and race. And this summer, I also helped number check and organize data from PRRI surveys. I also compiled data for media requests. For instance, we would have reporters reach out and we would give them the statistics on topics that they inquired about. And I also helped brainstorm areas of research as well as future survey questions. Next slide, please. Thank you. This internship basically combined both of my majors, and it was really cool to observe how politics as well as other topics are perceived by citizens. It was also really fascinating to conduct research on COVID-19, especially since it's such a relevant and developing topic. And one of my other takeaways is that I also learned that statistics and weighting are really important when working with data. I took statistics last year as a freshman, and I found it to be super useful, and it gave me many more outlets for working with the data and looking for patterns and trends. And in the future, I would love to continue to study public policy and public opinion and how they interact. Lastly, thank you so much to Star Center and to Public Religion Research Institute for having me. It was a wonderful opportunity and I absolutely love working there this summer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next up is Hildi Perrin.
Hello, everyone. I'm Hildi Perrin. I am a junior double majoring in history and German studies with minors in music and European studies. And this summer, I was an intern at George Washington's Mount Vernon. Next slide, please. I was working remotely for the Center for Digital History. I did a couple of different things this summer, but the main project I worked on was the Early American Music Manuscript Database. So I did a lot of data entry from 18th and 19th century songs that have been digitized and put into a database. And I was also able to do a lot of research into the particular songs and composers. I really enjoyed working on this project because I am a music minor. So it was a really cool way to combine my interest in history with my love of music. In addition to that project, I also got to learn more about digital history and was able to assist on both the podcast and the digital book talks that Mount Vernon produces. Next slide. And my biggest takeaways from this experience would probably be a new appreciation for digital history as a field. I had had some experience previous to this with digital history projects, but didn't really know that much about it. But this summer, I really got to delve into it, learned about all the things that you can do with it and who you can connect and the different kind of projects that you can make digital and reach new people with. I also gained a lot of new connections from this experience. My supervisors were really great and they set up conversations with people all over Mount Vernon, from archaeologists to archivists and everyone in between. So I was able to really learn about careers in public history, and I was able to discern kind of what my career goals and the career path I would like to take is. I just want to say a last thank you to both the Star Center and Mount Vernon and everyone else who contributed to these projects.
Thanks so much, Hildi. Next up is Ericaquinones.
Hi, I'm Ericaquinones. I'm a senior and a double major in English and German with a double minor in political science and European studies. And I spent my summer interning with the Maryland State Archives in their research department. Next slide, please. So I was one of 3 interns working in the preliminary stages of an ongoing project to identify and then tell the stories of people who were enslaved by governors of Maryland. So as part of those beginning stages, we were conducting a thing called counting history, in which we went through censuses, land records, probates, and other documents referring to governors of Maryland and their wives in order to look for and identify enslaved people whom they held, as well as any identifying characteristics of those people that we could use to then follow them throughout the rest of their lives. I also wrote part of a newsletter, which is very cool. Next slide, please. One of the biggest takeaways from this is just what a great opportunity it was. I'm a prospective library science student after I graduate, and internships like this really aren't given to undergrad students. They're mostly kind of reserved for graduate students. So it was a fantastic opportunity to get experience in the field of work and network with people from all across the archives, learning about the different parts that make the archives function and the different paths that library sciences can take you down. But it was also really just telling for my own personal research and interests. Anyone who knows me knows that my theses revolve very strongly around relationships of power and language, and that just showed up again and again in this work, be it through the literal institutionalizing and legalizing of the oppression of people by regulating people with cattle, with furniture and wills, or the use of racist, misogynistic, ableist, or even moralistic language to give value to human beings. It was a really sobering experience and really telling to my own personal research. So, of course, a big thank you to the Star Center, to the Maryland State Archives, and the other interns who are there with me. And I really look forward to seeing the rest of my Explore America cohorts presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Next up is Sam Robinson.
Hey everyone, I'm Sam. I graduated in May. I was a history major and accounting minor. And this summer I was a remote member services intern at the Human Rights Campaign, which is one of the nation's largest LGBTQ plus organizations. Next slide, please. So my day-to-day responsibilities, I responded to inquiries from HRC's over 3 million members and supporters. I also helped update the records for those constituents. One of my favorite projects was researching which prides are being put on for 2021 and helping HRC allocate their resources to those. I got to attend membership and development meetings, which really helped me understand how these teams collaborate and get work done. And HRC is a very large organization. Besides their political work, they also do a lot of education on the HRC Foundation side. So once or twice a week, me and the other interns would attend brown bags during the lunch hour about the dozen or so educational initiatives that HRC is currently involved in. So I was definitely kept very busy, but it was a very fulfilling experience for me. Next slide, please. So I had a lot of takeaways from this experience. It really helped give me a grasp on how these large nonprofits operate and get work done, even though there's so much to do. I also had a lot of amazing networking opportunities. HRC hosted a networking mixer with interns from about a dozen other nonprofits in DC. So that really helped me expand my circle, and also just networking with HRC employees who were very welcoming and very willing to share what they've learned at their careers. It also gave me a lot of understanding about the most pressing issues for the LGBTQ plus community today. I think a popular perception, HRC is very well known for their efforts on marriage equality, but right now they're working on defending trans kids in schools, trying to pass the Equality Act, and lots of other important work, especially for the most marginalized people in the community. So it really gave me an understanding of what is most important today. And finally, it motivated me to pursue a job in the nonprofit space. I was kind of leaning towards going in another direction with accounting or something, but I think I've discovered that nonprofits is where my passion really is. So I want to thank the Star Center and HRC for this amazing opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. Next up is Moises Severino.
Hello, my name is Moise, and I'm currently a sophomore here at Washington College. My major is psychology and a minor in justice law and society. After I graduate from Washington College, I plan to attend law school and begin my own practice in civil law. Over the summer for my internship, I was placed at the National Portrait Gallery. My time at the National Portrait Gallery has been an invaluable experience. And during that time at the National Portrait Gallery, I interned for Kate LeMay in the history department and helped with object research for the exhibition on the year 1898 and the conflicts leading to American imperial acquisitions of overseas lands. You click the next slide. Thank you. Over the course of my time there, I researched interesting sitters and objects that would be featured in the up and coming exhibit on 1898. I have included a few on this slide that I found interesting. First, I began with Luis Munoz Rivera, who is a leading activist for Puerto Rican autonomy. And autonomy means to self-govern. He believed that complete independence was unrealistic and focused on a system of home rule within the framework of U.S. sovereignty. I also learned about the insular cases, which were Supreme Court decisions in the early 1900s that ratified the full extension of U.S. sovereignty and laws without providing a full extension of constitutional rights to those individuals on those lands. So basically they were a part of the U.S., but not a part of the U.S. rights-wise. I also ventured into the life of Alfred Thayer Mahan, who was born on September 27, 1840 at West Point, New York. He was a Navy admiral and arguably one of the most influential Navy strategists. Most of his praise comes from his work about sea power, and sea power refers to a nation's naval power. And Alfred proclaimed that the nation with the greatest naval power will have the greatest worldwide impact. His readings and his writings and ideas are still learned today. It is not just in the US, but also across the world, one of the most influential. Then I also learned about learned and researched about the destruction of the USS Maine, and how it contributed to to basically the start of a war between Cuba and the Spanish-American War, and how even though the biggest interesting fact about it is the fact that no one blamed the Spanish, or there was no solid evidence, but it still catapulted into this big hoorah, because they just wanted to fight, basically. And so I found that very much interesting. Next slide. Takeaways. So during my internship, I strengthened some of my skills, such as researching. I was able to socialize and connect with a lot of different people. And I also gained a new perspective on just a museum, like all the hard work that it takes to prepare for an exhibit, and how, as a viewer who goes to the museum, we don't think much about what goes behind the words under the picture, and how important that really is. I also want to thank the Star Center and everyone who's involved in allowing me to experience this. Thank you.
Thank you, Moise. So next up is a student who could not be with us this evening. She is actually currently enrolled as a graduate student pursuing a MA in public history. So this is a pre-recorded video from Katie Shank.
Hi everyone, my name is Katie Shank, and I graduated from Washington College in May with a degree in history and minors in sociology and Black studies. And I spent my summer researching virtually with the Smithsonian American Art Museum in their curatorial department under two curators, Eleanor Harvey and John Jacob, mainly focusing on two early African-American artists, Robert Duncanson, who did portraits and landscapes, and J.P. Ball, who was a photographer. So the reason behind my whole project was the Smithsonian recently acquired a number of daguerreotypes by early African-American artists. They're also going to be doing a gallery renovation in the next couple of years. So we wanted to explore stories of what it was like to be Black, to be an entrepreneur, to be an artist in antebellum America. So I was really focused on Cincinnati. Both Duncanson and Ball worked there in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. Also being on the Ohio River, the border between slavery and freedom, there was a really strong abolitionist community, as well as an active interracial underground railroad network. So my job was to look at these three different groups of people, one being the artists themselves, second, their patrons who were abolitionists, and third, those who worked in the Underground Railroad, to look at the overlap between those circles and see how those people were connected to and knew each other. So I did a lot of online primary and secondary source research, and produced basically a 40-page research report for the curators to use in previous research. So overall, my coursework and my thesis really prepared me to do this type of research, especially in an online setting and a virtual setting. This whole internship was a confirmation that going to grad school for public history, which I'm starting this fall, is definitely the right decision for me. It's what I'm really passionate about, and I love working in these types of settings. And third, a lot of my internship experiences have been more behind the scenes. This research is really independent, sort of removed from the public-facing aspects of the museum. So I really want to get more experience in public programs or visitor experience or education in general. But overall, this was a wonderful experience, and thank you so much to the Star Center for this opportunity.
And thank you, Katie, if you watch the recording of this at a later date.
Hi, everyone.
So next up is Dylan Snow.
Hello, everybody. I don't know if you can see me. Also, I apologize if my Wi-Fi is cutting out because it's been an issue, but my name is Dylan Snow. I'm a junior political science major, and I interned at the Society for Women's Health Research. You can go to the next slide. So in my capacity as an intern, I worked in the communications department, but the SWHR is a really small organization, and I got to touch a little bit of everything. So first and foremost, my duties included running the SWHR social media and website. I also wrote several blogs on the website about various medical issues. And kind of secondary duty of mine was scientific research and education projects. So we worked on fact sheets for psoriatic arthritis, eczema, and uterine fibroids. One of the key goals of the SWHR is discussing the biological differences in men versus women of different medical conditions, and also touching on medical conditions that specifically impact women. So we worked on several fact sheets and video toolkits to try to inform patients who might have certain conditions. I also worked on a little bit of policy advocacy and lobbying, as the SWHR has a big aspect in public policy. And finally, I hosted and led several briefings and roundtables throughout the summer. You can go to the next slide. So the skills and lessons that I learned all have to do with what it's like to work in a nonprofit, which was one of my most interested subjects going into the summer. I was really intrigued to see what it was like to work in that sort of environment. So first and foremost, I learned about nonprofit communications, specifically like social media, running a website. Secondly, I learned a lot about medical research and education. As I mentioned, we did a lot of work trying to simplify very complex issues and helping patients understand what they're going through. And there's a lot of issues, a lot of conditions out there that many patients just don't know much about. So yeah, I also got to dip my toe a little bit into policy advocacy and lobbying through a couple Zoom discussions with congressional staffers and congresspeople. And finally, I learned about nonprofit development in both fundraising and also just the structure of nonprofit organizations. And I think that learning all of these skills has definitely given me a view of what it's like to work in a nonprofit advocacy group. So I'd like to thank the SWHR and the Star Center for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan. Next up is Jude Swazaby. Jude, are you here?
Yeah, can you?
Hey, Jude. Sorry, that was somewhat of a Beatles joke. I don't know if anyone got it.
Wi-Fi issues. I'm so sorry.
I know that on campus Wi-Fi is really
We're having campus Wi-Fi issues at the moment.
Should we go on to the next person, and maybe the campus Wi-Fi will improve in its fitful way in a minute?
All right, Jude, we'll come back to you. All right, next up is Nick Splendoria.
Hi, can everyone hear me? Is the Wi-Fi okay?
It's okay.
Awesome. So hi, everyone. My name's Nick Splendoria. I'm a junior. I'm a political science and communications and media studies major and a minor in philosophy. And this summer I had the awesome opportunity to intern in the Office of the Historian for the U.S. House of Representatives. So their job is to make the history of the People's House public, to serve as the institutional memory for the House of Representatives, and to also provide resources, whether it be to members of Congress, to journalists, or again, to the public. Next slide, please. So over the summer, I had the opportunity to work on a lot of projects. This is kind of just a really small snapshot. So the first one that was ongoing was updating the biographical directory of Congress. And this is this massive directory of all 11,000 members of Congress that have served. So one of my jobs was making sure that birth and death dates are correct, especially for members of Congress that served in the 19th century, because those records are often hard to find, making sure that we have the burial locations known for members of Congress that had passed away, and for making sure that the actual biographies themselves of members of Congress were accurate. So if they were professors somewhere after their tenure in Congress, that the biography reflected when their tenure ended. Next, I also worked on researching some congressional journalists. So we found information about Vance Trimble, who his stories had gone to the wayside, but he published this explosive expose in the 1950s about nepotism in Congress and had members of Congress rail against him on the House floor, like invoke his name. And this had just been forgotten to history. So we did some work trying to find some research on him and making sure that the people can know about this really interesting story. And then one of the other major projects that I worked on was finding out information about members of Congress and the Supreme Court. So it initially started with this small task of, hey, go look through the bar of the Supreme Court and see if you can find any members that are also listed in the bar of the Supreme Court. And that just turned out to be not really possible because the bar of the Supreme Court is so big. So then it turned into this kind of months-long process of trying to figure out how we can analyze this relationship, and it ended with me kind of putting together some resources about members of Congress that argued cases before the Supreme Court while they served, this kind of really niche topic, but important topic. And that research is going to be ongoing because it hasn't really been studied before. So it was really, really cool to do. Next slide, please. Some of the key takeaways were I got to learn how to do congressional research. I had never really done congressional research in the past, so I got to read things like the Congressional Record, current and historical versions, committee hearings, using the Congressional Research Services and the Library of Congress Research Services, so kind of expanding my view of what research is and the different resources that are available. I got to work in a professional environment, so this was a big change from a lot of internships I'd done. I was working in an office setting as opposed to like a campaign setting, so I got to develop some really incredible relationships with the other colleagues in the office. And I also got to engage with public history. So the goal of the Office of the Historian is ultimately serving the people, making the history of the People's House available to them and making sure that everyone can learn about this really incredible institution. So it was really cool to do that and engage with some really cool history because I love Congress and I love history. So it was a really cool combination of that. So I want to give a big thank you to the Star Center and to the Office of the Historian because I had a phenomenal summer.
Great, thank you, Nick. Next up is Elizabeth Tilley.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Tilley. I am a double major in art history and psychology. Next slide, please. So I interned at the Biggs Museum of American Art in Dover, Delaware. My main kind of things I had to do or got to do were make social media graphics and post on their social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I took photographs of a lot of their events. We had a lot of camps and kid workshops, so I got to also work with a lot of weekly programs, and we had this thing called Read and Make, and kids would come and we would have someone sing and read books to them, and they'd make crafts, and I'd help out with some of the crafts and take photos of the kids. Next slide, please. So this was also a part-time internship, so my full summer wasn't dedicated to this, so I didn't have a lot of responsibilities, but my biggest takeaways were being able to experience being in a museum on the back end, which as an art major, that's really cool. I've never had that experience before. So I got to see like the installation process for all the art exhibitions. We had a huge Winslow Homer exhibition. Um, and seeing the background of social media managing for a big organization like an art museum, and also looking for my career pathways because I'm a senior. um, it was cool to see kind of different opportunities for me. I could also go into marketing, I could go into museum curatorial work. It gave me a lot of different viewpoints of possible careers just because I'm not 100% sure what I want to do when I graduate. So it definitely let me have the opportunity to see different possible career paths. Also, big thank you to the Star Center. I am an art major, so I didn't think that I would really fit into this program, but it really helped me out this summer and made me see what I could do with my career. So thanks.
Art majors are always welcome. Thank you. Next up is Alex Treble.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me first off?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm Alex. I'm currently a junior at Washington College, and I'm majoring in history. So over the summer, I worked digitally, funnily enough, as a digitization intern at the American Philosophical Society, or the APS. So yeah, next slide. So my job at the APS was to enhance their Black history resources, which as a digitization intern means that I created transcriptions and descriptions for manuscripts within the APS's digital library and their online finding aid, which did not previously have transcriptions or descriptions. This was actually part of the beginning of a wider project at the APS to put forward a lot of neglected materials written by and about Black Americans. So as I got further into my internship period, I ended up working with materials related to Louis C. King, who I have a picture of up on the slide. Louis King was a relatively obscure Black anthropologist in the early 20th century who did a relatively groundbreaking community study of rural Black society, especially in West Virginia, where he actually grew up. It was one of the first ever anthropological studies of Black society and culture in the United States, titled Negro Life in a Rural Community. And I worked to transcribe that in its entirety. I also worked with his letter correspondence with Franz Boas, who was his teacher, his mentor, and also his thesis supervisor. And a lot of their letters were actually about the thesis, which was interesting because they sort of bounced off each other a lot, and you could see the influence that Boas had on the ideas that King presented in the thesis. And so the reason I focused on King was because my project as an intern was to make an online exhibit page. And in that page, I highlighted King's work and some specific examples of the how the correspondence and how his thesis were connected and how they were important for the wider discussion at the time and still today about race in the United States. Yeah, next slide. So my key takeaways from this were that I got really excited over manuscripts and the organization of these manuscripts and archival work. This was my first time really exploring what I could do with my education in history. And I think that now, after having this experience, that I'm strongly leaning towards a career dealing with manuscripts and archives. And I'm probably going to focus the rest of my academic career on aiding this path. And I'm probably going to also try and get more experience in the same field, maybe through other internships, something similar. Yeah, and lastly, I just wanted to thank everyone at the Star Center and at the APS for giving me the opportunity to have an internship, because it's really helped me out. And I hope I've been useful in some way in the opposite direction.
Thanks, Alex. Next up is Keeley Verbeek, who actually also cannot be here tonight as she is currently in a soccer game. So go Whack. But give me one moment as I pull up her, pull up her video.
Good afternoon. I hope you're all having a great start to your week. My name is Keeley Verbeek, and I'm a senior at Washington College majoring in art history with a minor in both secondary education and arts management and entrepreneurship. Through the Star Center, I was given the amazing opportunity to intern in the Professional Development Office at the New York Historical Society, working directly with the Women in the American Story curriculum. During the few months that I was there, I worked on 2 separate projects. The first was a group project with 3 other summer interns from different departments. As a group, we were tasked with creating a lesson plan that included 4 separate activities using objects from one of the museum's collections. We decided we wanted to look at examples of material culture that were being produced in the time period directly following the United States' greatest territorial expansion, and ended up choosing to focus on the Lyman board games collection. We each picked objects that we felt provided a rich context into the values and beliefs that were prominent in Western culture during the mid to late 19th century. What I found the most impactful about the particular objects we chose is that the visual rhetoric on each of the covers of the board games would be seen as extremely controversial and or problematic if they were to be sold yet today, yet at the time, the intended audience of these games was for children. Our goal with this project was to find a way to unpack and contextualize these objects within an educational space rather than completely discounting them. We designed our activities to draw attention directly to the imagery and to encourage students to think critically about how and why those representations help those empowered to sculpt a narrative that benefited their particular cause. It was our hope that the questions we came up with would spark productive conversation that could be applied both within the confines of the classroom and beyond. And by creating a connection between the imagery used on these board games and various portrayals of historical events, we hope to help students become more conscious of the implicit and explicit values embedded in the media they consume daily. For my second project, I was tasked with creating student versions of existing arts integration activities within the Women in the American Story curriculum. I was to offer examples to be included within the slide decks and add any additional modifications, whether that was within the arts supplies, technologically, or otherwise, so that a wide range of students would have the ability to complete these lessons. Both my work with the Women in the American Story curriculum and my work on the MSL project allowed me to explore the countless artifacts that the New York Historical Society has to offer, in addition to allowing me to further my skills in using graphic design as a mode of storytelling. I have loved getting to build relationships within my cohort, and I think we have been able to blend our individual abilities to bring this project together in a really interesting way. I hope you guys will get the chance to check it out and take as much of an interest in it as I did. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Keeley. And we will now jump back into our PowerPoint. And next up is Megan Walsh.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. So hello, my name is Megan Walsh. I'm a recent graduate from class of 2021. And at WAC, I was an English major and a creative writing minor. And this past summer, I was lucky enough to intern at Winter Museum, Garden, and Library, which was just a phenomenal experience. And I was able to really dig into so many interesting things that goes on at Winter. So you can go to the next slide. Thanks. Okay, so what exactly did I do at Winter? It was kind of a difficult question to answer over the summer, even though it was a question that I got a lot, because I was involved in so many projects. I primarily, though, worked on social media, where I kind of developed this little presentation on Winter's social media engagement and how they could sort of cultivate a younger audience on social media, especially platforms such as Twitter and Instagram. I also made many flyers for the talks that people gave in the fellowship program. These were like talks presenting their research. So I was able to like work with them, get to see a little bit about their research and what they did, and then form a flyer that advertised it. And I was also able to work on some posts for social media of items in the house and, you know, material culture things in general. My favorite of which was researching and recording audio for a post on these antique breast pumps, which you can see in sort of the top picture here. I was able to dig through the library collections and find below a book about like these specific breast pipes and like, you know, how they were used. So that was really, really interesting. I had the opportunity to go through the house and look at a lot of these objects myself. If you've never been to Winterthur, I totally recommend going on the tour, although you won't see all of the rooms because there's like 100+ rooms. What you will see is definitely enough to give you an idea of how staggering the collections are. The picture on the bottom right is me and some of my Winterthur coworkers in one of the rooms. And I was also able to help out at the annual car show, which is the picture at the top right, which was also really cool because I got to ride in an antique car. And the other thing that I did was publications. So Winterthur publishes Winterthur Portfolio, which is a journal of material culture. And I was able to read through manuscripts which were, you know, submitted for publication, suggest editing, and even find reviewers for manuscripts that were going to be published, which was really cool. It was awesome to see the behind the scenes publication process at such like a big journal, or it just has so many submissions coming in. So it was really fantastic to be able to see their process of narrowing submissions down and what they did once they, you know, decided to publish something. It was really cool. And I even got to present on a book for publication. I got to read a book and then, you know, present it to that group and tell them why I thought it would be a good fit for the journal. So yes, I think we can go to the next slide. So in the future, currently taking a gap year, working as a screener for Cherry Tree, helping out a little bit with the Rachel Carson Landmark Society with their annual poetry contest, and I'm applying to MFA programs. So it kind of seems like, you know, I'm not going in a museum direction specifically right now, but one of my biggest takeaways from this experience was how much I really loved being a part of the publication process. And so I'm definitely going to be looking into getting some more experience in that field in the future. Thank you so much. And I want to say a thank you to the Star Center and to Winterthur. This was my dream internship and it was great.
Thank you, Megan. Next up is Patricia Woodworth.
Hi, I'm Patricia. I'm a senior. I'm a history major with a business minor. And this summer I interned at Harpers Ferry National Historical Park. Next slide, please. So I was a research intern. Unfortunately, I never got to actually go to the park, but I researched a new addition to the park, which was the Alstadt farm. And from this farm, I chose to research Pennsylvania Germans that had migrated to the Shenandoah Valley and researching all aspects of their lives, specifically heritage, when and why they migrated to the valley. They had very specific forms of housing and agriculture, and then also looking at traditions and customs. And this all culminated in a research paper. Next slide, please. So my broader takeaways from the internship was I gained a lot of regional knowledge about the Shenandoah Valley and specifically Pennsylvania Germans. And I had a lot of practice for research and writing skills. And it really did increase my interest in the national park system because there was a presentation at the beginning to have us introduced, and it was fascinating the number of different aspects that go into the park system. And I want to thank everyone involved in helping me get this internship, and it was just an amazing experience.
Thanks, Patricia. Next up is Paris Young.
Hello, my name is Paris Young. I graduated from Washington College in the spring, and I majored in political science with a double minor in justice, law, and society and Black studies. And for the summer, I interned at the Apollo Theater in Harlem. Can I get the next slide? Thank you. So essentially what I did this summer, I worked under the community programming department. So basically I assisted with community related events. So the first event that I got to help on was the Respect the House event. And that was in June in celebration of Black Music Month. So at the Apollo, we had 5 DJs spinning house music under the Apollo's marquee. And essentially for that, I assisted on script writing, making sure the DJs knew the itinerary for the event, making sure, they knew the COVID protocols, everything behind the scenes I helped with. And then the second big event that I helped at the Apollo was the Luke Cage event, which was an online panel about the superhero Luke Cage, and we had the comic writers and the producers of the Netflix show basically do an online panel. And with that event, I helped with the video editing, researching images, script writing, contract writing, again, all the behind the scenes for these events I help with. Next slide, please. So basically what I learned is I got to tap into skills that I did not know that I have. Like, I really didn't have that much experience with event planning. So basically working with the community programming department allowed me to be a little bit more open-minded on what the things that I could do, such as like video editing. And with that, I got my first production credit and script writing and a lot of other things. And one of like the main takeaways for me is how important community was. So with the Respect the House event, that was the first in-person event that the Apollo had since the pandemic started. So seeing how happy and excited the community members were when that event was going on, it just, it really touched my heart that everybody got to be in community with each other after being so isolated for a long time. So thank you again for the this opportunity. Thank you for the Star Center and the Apollo Theater.
Thanks, Paris. Jude, are you still here? And has
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, that's great.
Let me get back to your slide.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Jude. I apologize for earlier. I was having some technical difficulties, but I am currently a sophomore. I am majoring in political science and double minoring in journalism, editing and publishing, and justice, law, and society. And during the summer, I had the privilege of being able to intern for the Library of Congress Publishing Office. Next slide, please. So, at the library, I was able to work on a variety of different projects, which I really enjoyed. I think one of my favorites must have been the copyright research. A lot of that was done for the library's Crime Classic series. And just some context, the Crime Classic series that the publishing office is doing is essentially just the republishing of crime novels from the 1860s to the 1960s. So I was able to do some work in just researching some of the future publications that were going to come out, making sure that they weren't orphan works, making sure who the legal owners of the work was before the republication. I was able to do a lot of research for future projects. I'm not sure if I can go in depth with a lot of them because I haven't been announced yet, but a lot of my research was going through the library's website. I'm looking through the resources and databases that they offered and being able to see if the library already had an exhibit on it or what information we could take from there and kind of use as a format for the republishing. It was also a lot of being able to look through and different art catalogs and galleries for cover images, for another publication that's coming up, a project that's coming up. So a lot of my time was really just researching and looking through different resources. I was also able to proofread manuscripts and sample pages for some future books that were in the works. And I think that was also one of my favorite assignments of being able to do, just kind of being able to see the pages, the layouts, looking through and being able to offer insight if there were any typos, if there were any formatting errors, just doing all of that. I also had the privilege of being able to attend 2 conferences. I attended the AU presses, which was at the beginning of my internship, and towards the end, I attended the NMPS conference, the National Museum Publishing Conference. Next slide, please. Thank you. So my time at the Library of Congress Publishing Office was really great, and a lot of the skills I learned were so invaluable. I've got to improve my research techniques and practices by being able to look at the multiple resources that the library had and the ones that they offered for me to use for research really helped me. And I think that's something I can definitely use even now in my college career, knowing really how to just use different resources and offer concise research. Time management was definitely a big takeaway. There were a lot of different projects that I was asked to work on. So it was a matter of knowing how to effectively distribute time towards those certain projects in a way that would allow me to get the most work done. It also improved my ability to work with the team. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but my internship was remote for the most part. So being able to communicate with my supervisors and being able to inform them with where I am in the process really also goes in hand with the professionality aspect and knowing how to professionally communicate. And it also exposed me to the publishing process, the insider of it. Oftentimes when I get books, I don't really get to think about the work that goes behind publishing said books. So being able to kind of be behind the scenes and seeing how the process goes about, how everyone contributes to the effort, and also being exposed to the legal aspect of publishing, which was the copyright research, figuring out who owns the project, who owns the work. It was really great. And so I want to thank the Star Center and the Library of Congress Publishing Office for the amazing experience. It was so great, and the virtual format did not take away from the overall experience that it was. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Jude. And thanks to all of our Explore America summer interns for sharing their experience with us tonight. We are closing in on the 6 o'clock hour, but we might have time for a question or two. You can either use the chat function or you can raise your hand and ask one of our interns a question. Yes, Clayton Black.
Yeah, I have a question for Hildi. Hildi, you said that one of the things that you sort of learned or that you got out of the experience was new things that you can do with digital history or with digitized history. And I wondered if you could sort of fill that out a little bit more and sort of say, what did you mean by that? And what is it you couldn't do before that now you think the digital environment allows?
Yeah, sure. So I think what I meant by that is just, I had never really considered digital history as its own field and never really thought of it. I mean, not that it isn't part of the history field, but just we learned, I mean, we read a lot of articles on like digital humanities and digital history. And like Mount Vernon is doing live streams and book talks and their podcasts. And I think the main thing that stood out to me about digital history is it's history projects that are able to reach anyone, anywhere. That, especially with the COVID pandemic, not everyone can go to a museum or can go to a lecture, but if you have lectures online, anyone can attend. And I know like my supervisor said that their lecture like numbers went up way higher during COVID because so many more people can come. And it also gets you out to a broad audience from people everywhere from like all walks of life are able to join in and participate in that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you for that question and for that answer. I'm also looking at the chat. Not many questions, but lots of praise. Everybody's very proud of all of our interns, and so am I. So, any other questions?
I think we have time for one or two more. If we run a few minutes past 6, it's not a tragedy. And people can also feel free to ask questions of all of our interns if they like, or share comments on all of their presentations. Well, I'll ask a question, which is, often when we're doing the kind of work that you guys are doing, we make discoveries, whether it's somebody working in an archive and finding a document that just opens a window onto a moment of history, somebody working in a museum where they might discover an artifact or an artwork that really speaks to them, someone working for an advocacy group who might find a fact that just really effectively conveys the movement or the cause that they're working on. So I wonder if maybe a few of the students would like to talk about any discoveries that they made this summer that were especially memorable. Maybe share one discovery. Okay, maybe not. Yesterday we had a number of students share, but perhaps today we won't. So are there any other questions? Oh, Nick.
Yeah, so I can share. So something that was new to me, it might not be newer, it's probably not newer to a lot of scholars, but I never realized how tight-knit the Washington community was. So the project on the members of Congress and the Supreme Court, like just from the small documents that I had, there were a number of members of Congress that while serving had also argued cases before the Supreme Court. And I think that's a bit of history that I had never realized, and I think a lot of people don't realize was a more common practice in the 19th and the early 20th centuries.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else? Okay, well, any further questions? And we're getting a lot more comments in the chat from people, including some of our supervisors about what great presentations these have been and what great work the students have done this summer, and that makes all of us involved very proud. Any last questions or comments? Okay, I guess we're ready to wrap this up. Thanks to all of you for participating. Congratulations on your fantastic work, and please spread the word to other Washington College students. Please, if you're still at WAC, feel free to reapply for next year. And good night, and thanks for everyone who attended.
Thank you all.